Good afternoon, dear colleagues, dear friends. We are beginning our traditional summary session. But to start, we have a traditionally event we would like to conduct. I don't know if you've noticed we had a contest of students' work of essays, and in order to sum up the results of that contest, I would like to invite to the stage the director of this forum, the person who bears the brunt of the responsibility for this organization, Maria Sereda. Please, you are welcome to come out to the stage. Let's give her a hand of applause. Thank you very much. Thank you for your support. I always get the most pleasant mission, which is to give out awards. And today, I would like to say that we had more than 200 participants in this contest we conducted this year. That included videos, beautiful video clips that talked about the potential of your region's development. We received essays, and we had winners both in the video and the essay nominations. We'll start with the videos. And the winning videos were displayed today in the lobby, on the screens, and on the main stage. You could see them during the break, and the students presented their pieces of work, and they presented how their regions could develop if the economy would be diversified, and instead of being natural resource-based, would lean towards non-resources sector. And it was difficult for us to select the best videos. We were hard-pressed to do this. Therefore, would like to announce as winners 3 nominations, and all 3 of them are invited to proceed to the stage. I understand the videos were created by groups of people, and they represented each their own respective universities, and they would have 1 representative from each delegation. The first one is Ekaterina Bespluk from Taliati, the financial university in that city. Evgenia Popova from the Republic of Udmurtia, the financial university. Ivan Pasichnik from the Komi Republic, the State Republican Management Academy. And I would like to ask my assistants to bring out the awards. And I would like to ask our co-chairs to step forward and have a good photo with our winners. Thank you very much, guys, for your great ideas, for your vision of the potential of development for your regions. We hope that the ideas that you've presented in a very short span of time will be implemented by you, by yourselves, and we will meet you as very good economists and even leaders of your respective regions. We have another nomination in the area of essays. We had 2 subjects, the best world practices in the development of industry and the agrarian and industrial complex, and how those practices could be adapted to the Russian reality. And I would like to invite to the stage to receive the award for the 3rd place, Maria Lumpova, Perm State's National Research University. Dear Maria, thank you very much for your wonderful piece of work. I would like to say that this is the 3rd time that you've sent your work to the forum. Thank you. The work was really of high quality. We liked it a lot. You were really this little away from the 1st place, and they were great ideas that will allow your region to develop really well. I really like this forum very much. I funded my trip here on my own. I was looking for funds this year again, but thanks to you and your support, I was able to travel free of charge with your support, and I was freely getting out of paper. I only had this much left, and I used a very small font in order to meet your requirements in terms of size of my work. The next one to come out to the stage is Valeria Averyanova from the Ivanova branch of the Plekhanov Economic Academy to receive an award for the second place. And I would like to note that the goal was to share with us the experience of other countries in the area of innovation and industrial policies. What she did, she mentioned 8 experiences of 8 different countries in her work. Congratulations. China, Japan, USA, South Korea, Chile, Ireland, and Finland, and of course France. Thank you very much. That was a very good essay. I would like to thank the organizers for this wonderful forum. It's the second time I participate in the forum like this. It's a great honor for me to really show what I'm capable of and express the ideas that could be applicable to Russia. I would like to say about the span of time we were given. We didn't have a lot of time to do this. It was difficult to put together the experience of these countries in a cohesive way, but hopefully it's going to be used in Russia in a sensible way. And I would like to thank my university for providing me with the opportunity to come here and to participate in this event. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Some people are saying that we need to expand the size of our essays. And the first place goes to Victoria Arutyunyan from the Lipetsk branch of the Financial University under the government of Russia. Thank you very much. You wrote about the various development measures and capabilities for changing the situation in a number of Russian regions, such as Dagestan, Yakutia, Altai Krai, Far East, Chechen Republic. We were amazed. This is not just the history of the developments of one region. It was a full-fledged analysis of 5 Russian regions. Thank you very much for your work. I would also like to say my thank you to the organizers of the forum. This is my second time at the forum, and this is something that I would call a fulfillment of my dream, that I'm here and I'm the winner. Thank you. Thank you very much. We would like to invite you to continue your discussion, dear colleagues. Wonderful. That's such a great thing. Dear colleagues, we have on the stage the organizers and moderators of some of the events of our forum, and each of them will be given 5 minutes to share with you how their respective conferences proceeded and what are the main results of those events. And the purpose of this summary is to give you an overview, because not everyone has been given an opportunity to visit all of the sessions. Fortunately, this is a big forum, and now we have an opportunity to catch up if we were missing something. Now let's listen to the moderators in turn, and we'll give the floor to Yuri Boldarev as in the first order of priority, as he's sitting at the farthest edge over there. Hello, dear comrades and dear colleagues. The title of this conference had a prehistory. A couple of months ago, I was asked to organize the title for a conference within the forum, and I said, of course, we will have to think about what we're going to do with the victory that we've achieved. Everyone was laughing, because who is going to give you an opportunity to win? Okay, if it's not about victory, then I said we need to do some reflection. And that resulted in the title. Did the election campaign, the presidential election campaign, become a true national or nationwide discussion about the future development of the nation. There was a lot of interest for this conference, which was kind of surprising for me, because this was primarily a rhetorical question. Even yesterday, during the first plenary session, a very clear answer was given to that question. People were sitting here, and they formulated quite clearly on this stage everything that had been proposed is absolutely different from what is being done in the country, and the winner is the person who didn't propose anything. And I would like to be a witness. Not a single debate included anyone who would risk to protect the existing economic and social policies. And nevertheless, the winner is the person who embodied this policy for the last 18 years and implemented it in reality. So the situation is quite absurd. Nevertheless, the election has passed many aspects and details about which people wanted to talk about. Let me mention them. Viktor Alksnis, Nikolai Kolomentsev from the Communist Party, Andrei Savely from the Great Russia Party, Hasbulatov and Tverkova Olga, Vladimir Kashin, Zal Valentin, Pavel Grudinin, candidates for presidency, and he had an opportunity at the end of our conference to answer questions. There was a group on the so-called ethical economy. In our conference declared that there will be a movement towards or in favor of the ethical economy. Dmitry Lubomudrov and Maxim Trud. Vasily Semchera and Mikhail Abramov, whom I mentioned, created an expert group during the election campaign, and they assembled a lot of materials that go outside the bounds of that campaign. Briefly, let me say, did this campaign become a national discussion? No. Everything has been done and was done to avoid such a public discussion. Attention was shifted to a lot of different things, like 45-minute-long reports that contained cartoons about our miracle weapons. Anything was done to avoid the discussion, substantive discussion about the development of our country. But what did this election campaign become? Unfortunately, it became a very bright demonstration, very vivid demonstration of the scale of this evil that we're faced with, and that it is not punishable. Following the events that took place in Cameroon, people are talking about the panic. So the label and the libel campaign that we saw is something that no one is going to be punished. Everyone was demonstrated that evil is well organized, and it is absolutely unpunishable. Yes, there are positive sides to that as well. A great number of people organized themselves, and they organized themselves despite all of the previous conflicts and rifts that such evil tried to create elsewhere. I've seen people combining their efforts, monarchists, socialists, and everyone. They were all driven by the same desire to find a common solution for their region and for their country in general. Secondly, the internet. The internet ended up being the only field which is not fully controlled by the authorities. They've tried various manipulations. They did some ranking up of the likes and dislikes. There was one video where the president was trying some meat drink. It was by likes driven up to the #1 place, and this was trolled by the internet. So all of these instruments didn't work in the internet space. People could very effectively act, and people learn how to organize themselves on the internet, and that was a great school for them. Then they also learned to raise questions and look for their solutions. And after the elections, we had those events in the regions with the waste dumps, and people were invited to go to a congress which deals with ecology, and people were really showing their ability to gather together and self-organize. The election campaign wasn't in vain. Life isn't over, and we need to continue learning to be self-organized, and instead of being askers, we need to be partners of other more powerful forces. And if we learn this, we can be successful. Dear friends, as you know, there are two co-organizers here at the forum. When we agreed that Mr. Babkin would be leading the left side of this stage, and I'm going to be responsible for the right side. And I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Khodorkovsky, one of the most famous scholars of the world economic thought. And he asked me, and usually I'm asked to increase the time limit, and he asked me to allow him to speak for a shorter period of time. He's a real hero. I'm not a hero, I'm a serious scientist. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you. I would like to tell you about the results of my section that dealt with the world economic thought and the national economic thought, where we are coming with that. Everyone came to the conclusion that after the crisis that the Western economic thought had because of the 2008-2009 crisis in the world, they are now restructuring and reorganizing. This restructuring has been quite superficial, and it's not quite clear what things are going to end up with. But similar to the previous traits, such as the new classical theory, the Austrian school, Keynesians, institutionalism of different ilks, a new group of schools is now emerging, and they are attracting attention to themselves. One of them is the behaviorist school of economy. They've already produced several Nobel winners. The experimental economy, which already is represented by a number of Nobel Prize winners. There is an interest in the theory of man. What is man, and what role the man plays in the economy? Contemporary economic thought is getting further away from the thought that a person is a rational person and an egotist at the same time. And very often they come to the conclusion that a person is a multifaceted being, and people are not alike. There are groups of people with varying properties and traits, and most importantly, people are irrational in many of their manifestations. Secondly, they started thinking about which thought is going to prevail in our country. I personally expressed the opinion that there is some hope that finally in the government will part ways with that libertarian picture of the world which has been dominating in our nation since 1991. My dreams are based on the following. Under Yeltsin, we had a fairly strong libertarian concept which had been prevailing everywhere and dominant everywhere. It was a rethought in the area of foreign policy and foreign relations, where Mr. Kozyrev's comprador type of the policy was replaced by the current policy, which is country-centered. And then this policy of managing the army and the fleet was rethought. In the past, our military was formed by the person for whom it was most important to sell the property of the military in any good way. And he didn't do it in a good way. He did it negligently, for which he nearly ended up in prison. Now, he is replaced by a different person who is patriotic in his inclinations, and the people are, in general, happy. So maybe within our cabinet of ministers in the economic group, there will be a change to this libertarian concept that says that the market is capable of anything, and we can do whatever we want, and we can get laid back. And people started thinking, what concept would be desirable for our concepts and for our situation? And Ruslan Kazbulatov expressed a very deep and profound idea, I believe. He said that whatever concept we put forward, whatever program, even the best one we adopt, nothing will come out of it unless we conduct a very deep and profound administrative reform. Some other participants of the discussion were even more radical. Some people said that the entire elite, economic elite of our country is good for nothing. And they are not looking after the national interests. Rather, they are looking after their own interests. And until this elite is in power, and until it dominates, until it becomes socially oriented, nothing good will come out of all this. But there is hope that this elite will be forged. And many people said that for our country, the social democratic model would probably be more fitting for our country, with a strong state sector, with the orientation towards social solidarity and fairness and justice. But of course, together with the economic justice, where the market can correct the state and will be the main regulator in the economy. And this model showed its effectiveness in the most healthy economic countries, such as Sweden, Germany, and some other states. I think these are the key takeouts and takeaways. And I'm not urging us to go back, but to a certain degree, we need to be reminded that there was a time when the country elite worked not because they were fearing repercussions, and they were able to achieve good results. When Yuri Gagarin, and he's the closest person to the scientific progress, when Gagarin was launched into space, what did he get from our government? He got a 3-bedroom apartment, a salary of 600 rubles, a car, and a boat as a gift from the state. Was it just one lump sum payment of 600 rubles? No, it was a constant one. Plus, he skipped the rank of the captain and became a major right away. So there are some people that believe that only huge salaries can prompt our directors of our largest companies to work effectively. And there are some people that believe that if this income of these directors is 100 times greater than before, that would propel them to work more effectively for the society, as did the good managers in the good old days. I don't believe in that, and I know that in Finland, in good companies, the director's salary is only 10 times higher than the average price in the company, and I think this should be more than sufficient for the company to work effectively. Don't believe those who can tell you that only 100 times difference, or a salary of 1 million or even billion bonuses at the end of the year can give you effectiveness. That's not true. That doesn't represent the world experience. Thank you. You've spoken for 6 minutes now. Now I wanted to remind you that you said that you do not want them to be paid that much, but in the labor camps they didn't get paid a lot, but still they did their work quite well. Well, I would like to give the floor to Andrei Berezhnoy. He's not just one of our bright speakers, but he's also the owner and the founder of Ralph Ringer, one of the most popular shoe brands in Russia.
So should I would like to turn on my video on the screen. Well, the crew is preparing for the takeoff. Do you please turn off your electronic device? Why do we need to turn off our device? Because they can disturb the navigation system of the aircraft. Can I continue how they disturb the aircraft? That's very simple. Electronic devices create disturbance in the connection between the aircraft and the air traffic control during takeoff and landing. Please be sure that your seats are in the upright positions. But about the radio, it's clear. Well, how can my small device can disturb? All the electronic devices have electromagnetic field which can disturb the radio connection. So this aircraft cannot be resist my iPad for $990. If it is so dangerous. Why you cannot really ban to bring them to the door? So I can also capture in my Nintendo the aircraft. Some devices are dangerous, the others less dangerous. And why the aircraft doesn't create any disturbance for my phone, and I never switch off the phone and nothing happens. You cannot. All electronic devices have to be turned off, and I cannot take off my heart simulator. Please don't turn it off. And I have a pencil. The magic is driving this aircraft. Nobody knows why your phones need to be turned off, because nobody knows how the aircraft flies. Just two stupid guys created this shit of a rope and cardboard. Nobody understands. The traction creates the power to take off. The people really like to think that they understand something when nobody understands anything. We just really fly through this space on this aircraft weighing more than 300 tons, and you think about your phones now. Please turn off your Twitters and Facebookers for 30 minutes as long as we are taking off to the sky. And please read your magazines. Is it clear? And that's actually quite clear. You just need to say it as in the very beginning. My sister is pregnant. That was actually Mr. Berezhnoy in his speech. On one hand, I wanted to make this situation a bit simpler, but on the other hand, this video also illustrates the content of the discussion I was taking part yesterday in. That's not all. I will also prepare a more laughing part. This discussion were debates to the topic globalism or protectionism. And there were two groups which we can be seen very clear also in the political information space. Those guys who do only theoretic economic theory, and the practitioners, including the technical smart guys. And the positions were very strong. So the theory guys were these flight attendants. They don't really understand why everything is happening. They are actually within their ideological limitations and say that their goal was Professor Urnov, for example, in the High School of Economics, and another guy from the same school. They said that the goal of any economic goal was to attract foreign investments. So everything what is actually doesn't attract investments should be stopped, or what attracts investments should develop. On the other hand, I'm a practitioner. We thought that not everything is so simple in this world, and to expect that someone from a third country would come to Russia. Foreign investments means someone from another country would come to Russia and would take over the risk and would do something with our hands. And I don't believe in it, and they believe in it. But actually, and unfortunately, the government is full of guys who are listening to this gentleman. And question number one, how can you explain the fact that after imposing these sanctions, the protective measures, because the embargo is a protective measure, now it is banned to import cheese from Europe. And within the last 1.5 years, there will be another dairy plant constructed in the Russian region, and a full embargo led to the situation with investments, and they said you need to be open everything, and this will attract the investments. And question number 2, how the investments can come, how we can create a margin, because any business activity in the market activity has a goal, which is the profit, and if the territory where we're living has higher cost and the export markets are protected by the customs duties, why can we get this margin of profit here if we don't regulate the situation with any tariff measures? And they are not able to answer this on it. And we also had this very real fight. Some of the people really wanted to leave the debate area, and the practitioners won in that situation and that discussion. But I'm not sure where the opinion would win that we need to protect our territory, or we need at least to help this territory to create equal competitive conditions. I think this opinion may win sometimes. And after this discussion, I thought, why these scientists didn't want to understand that there is another way, when the answer is very simple. They are just like the main Smerdikov from the brothers Karamazov book by Dostoevsky, that we don't have education, we don't have any technologies, and we have even no name. In our task is actually just to wait for foreign investors who will make everything what they want with us. And I think I'm not sure that it is possible to make an economic policy of a sovereign country. That was our discussion. Dear colleagues, as it is known, our forum differs from other forum because we have real diversity of opinions. We also have probably the mainstream of our criticism of the governmental line, but we also have differences. We have more conservative guys, we have more social democratic guys, and now I'd like to give the floor to the head of the conference of the modern social democracy. That's actually the modern social democracy, and it is important that and I was talking about the honest polls in Russia show that around a third of our population is still close to the social democratic ideas, despite the fact that the current ruling party, which should represent their interest, has quite a low impact. So, Comrade Guseledov, because he is a social democrat, and it is quite a tradition to call you comrade, because the social democrats call each other comrades. Thank you, Ruslan. I moderated this session with this original name, which is actually the glory and the down of the current social democracy, and we also understand that the parliamentary and presidential elections are over in Russia, and now we have a lower interest to the policy, to different political issues, and it also is reflected in the number of the participants and panelists of our round table. We also had people actually saying that the topic of social democracy was also touched in different and other sessions, and it also proves once again what Ruslan just said, that the social democratic ideas and principles are still demanded in the Russian society, but unfortunately they don't have any clear representatives in authorities which could really protect and implement the ideology of social democracy. in many Russian countries and managed to implement it in many European countries in reality. We didn't have a lot of people in our session. When I looked at the audience, I remembered what Vladimir Vysotsky wrote, that we got less wild people and no leaders, but most of these wild people guys came to our sessions and they generated a very active dialogue and discussion. I have to acknowledge that we spent not 1.5 hours, we talked for 2 hours and didn't manage to discuss everything what we wanted. What did we discuss? We really tried to point out three important topics. What is happening with the social democracy in Europe, which is where the social democracy was born. And the social democracy was really demanded actually between the 20th and 21st centuries. Schweitzer and Fomenko were talking about it. And we also need to understand that we had the glory of the social democracy in the 20th century because it was fighting for the rights of working people, and thanks to this fight we got salaries and pensions. And in the second part of the 20th century, the leading European countries had the social democratic parties as the ruling one, and it was last until the first decade of this century. But now we do see a very sad picture, and because the social democratic parties in France and Greece had to survive the next years. In Norway, Finland, and France, they lost the elections, and the Social Democrats also managed to join it's a big coalition in the very last minute, and they lost a lot during the last elections. And already Sweden and Portugal are the countries where the Social Democratic parties are still ruling parties, and it proves that the social democratic ideology already probably fulfilled the targets and tasks set in the 19th and 20th centuries, but the new challenges related to migration, economic crisis, is this ideology is not able to give adequate answers. And for example, the link Podemos from Spain, these parties can really put the Social Democrats aside, or the ADF in Germany, or the National Front in France, Liga CR in Spain, and many other parties. That was a sad picture, how the social democracy is losing its glory and goes down. And as for Russia, within the last 20 years, we didn't we also save a kind of favorable moving, what was mentioned by Boris Slavin and Boris Romanov. On the one hand, within all these years, especially in 1990s and the beginning of the zeros, we had a lot of link parties in Russia, and they managed to get together up to 10 or even more percent. But we had too many parties of this kind, but they managed to get no more than 1.5%. And these parties didn't manage to implement anything of their good ideas and proposals. And Ruslan also said that we have so many social democratic leaders who used to say, if you disagree with my proposal how to modernize Russia, why do I need Russia? If you are not able to move with these social democratic principles, this was the main reasons why the social democracy wasn't able actually to stand up until 2007. There was a period from 2007 until 2011 when we got a hope, because we got the first parliamentary party, which was actually the Справедливая Россия. And now the people also understand that this party is losing its popularity, and this party hasn't participated during the last presidential elections, where we had also communists, liberals, and national patriots, but no voice from the social democracy. That's actually kind of self-killing. And we also had Oleg Molchanov and Gennady Gudkov, who also tried to give an answer to a very acute question: is the future? What is can we expect in the future? And the situation is really complicated. We also understand that society is not really happy, and we also see also how the people protest in the Moscow region or in Camera. What is also a potential to develop this left-centric movement, and we also see that actually this particular platform is not so solid. This platform requires new leaders. The Russian social democracy should find the clear answers what to do with the social area, with the migration, and with the economy. And in our country, if you take into account the real situation where we are, we understand that the current circumstances dictated by the government are not really favoring the development of social democratic organizations, and this uh, experience with this party social democratic party in Russia shows that even if there is party from the bottom, it is much more difficult to bring it down back. That was actually the end of our discussion, but nevertheless, I would like to thank the organizers for including our round table into the agenda of this Moscow Economic Forum, and I really think that this topic will remain very important for us, and I also hope that the young generation, which is currently acting even more active now, will be able to convert this 30% from this silent support of social democratic values into real political organization, which will be able to protect these principles and will be able to implement as the social and democratic program which was mentioned by many colleagues before me. Thank you. And the next floor, I'd like to give the floor to Yuri Krupnov. He is a well-known public activist and economist. He also is an author of several projects of economic development in Russia. He also participated as organizer of one of the conference, and the topic will be called by Yuri himself. The topic was very acute 2 months ago. It was very acute, but within these 2 months, taking into account the Skripal's case and taking into account all these expel of diplomats, this topic became super acute with new call to prevent or to prepare. That was the topic of our debates. And the situation in our debates, and thanks, was not so easy. And it was a real democracy here at this Moscow Economic Forum, because I managed to identify not only two opposite opinions which are denying each other, but we also understand that these particular opinions build the mind of our elites when they make decisions. The first opinion was represented by Viktor Mironenko. He was also the member of the Central Committee of the Communist Party, and now he's working at the Institute of Europe. And Alexander Tsipko, who is also a well-known specialist, and they both were advisors to Mikhail Gorbachev, and they said that all these diplomatic scandals and the international relations crisis is because and the Russia is guilty of them, because Russia came to the situation when the whole power in the country is centralized, and Russia can do almost everything, even up till the nuclear blast against the Western companies, because in Russia there is one person who can do everything, and there is no control system, and in this case almost everything can happen. And I re-asked them both whether they really understand them correct, and they confirmed it, and they really reflected correctly the opinion of leading Western politicians who really are actually forcing us to feel blamed and guilty, and to feel that we are a criminal state with doing the aggression with the chemical weapons too. The other opinion was absolutely opposite. It was presented by Andrei Fefilov and by Georgy Fyodorov. And this opinion is based on that the West colonized us after the Soviet Union collapse, and the West feels that it hasn't brought its action to the end with Russia, and now it is absolutely obvious that a Cold War has been already announced for Russia, and now we can also make any response in this case. And I personally, as a moderator of this debate, also tried not to show my own opinion. And the first opinion is actually not acceptable, because it only reflects the phobia of the Western politicians. That is just a question of a very strange hate, which is actually historically grounded. And one of the Western historians wrote that the West hadn't liked Russia since the Crimean War in the 19th century. But I think that Russia is going to the right direction. And the second opinion, when we are colonized and the West would like to bring us down, but it's also not the reality. When we started discussing separate issues of this Cold War, we identified some general positions. The first general statement was, nothing is forecastable. Both are bad, and nothing can be forecast, and this Cold War doesn't look like as a clash of two global superpowers, but it can lead to anything what is in all the great with it, and this is the reflection of our all common opinion, and the people are ready for everything because they don't feel any bottom of this Cold War. We don't know how to feel this bottom, how to stop this wheel of hysteria, which can bring us to an absolute uncertainty. And the second moment is, in comparison to the previous Cold War from 1946 until 1991, it is not really clear what is the special case of Russia in this case, because we only have the standard answers. The West doesn't like us, we are specific, but if we listen to our leaders, they usually say we are in for democracy, we don't want to export communism, and we agree with everything what is happening in the West, except for some humanitarian issues in terms of family issues and so on. I think it is a very important moment that today we have been living in a space which is not clear. We actually haven't really understood the meaning of our civilization when the war has already started, but we cannot really articulate what is our own way. And moment three, which is also important in this case, in this case, we talk about the new financial structure for the world, or do we need to accept the current global system as it is? And Russia used to get in this system within the last years. We also joined the WTO, and WTO is just a moment of this financial system. And we also don't talk about these significant loans and from foreign banks, even more than $1 trillion. What is our peculiarity? What is our new financial mechanism which can be offered? There is no answer for it. You know, so the potential of hate on and potential of war is also clear, but Russia doesn't propose any project to the world which can help to change the situation significantly. That's the main conclusion of these debates. Thank you. Dear friends, we are going on with the right side. We say right side, that it doesn't mean that this side is always right. And I would like to introduce a person who is not really known because he is taking part for the first time in our forum. That's Ruslan Hasbulatov. And also would like to ask him to speak within the next 6 minutes and 1 minute more, because he is also a Ruslan like me. Thank you very much. I listened to the presentations and discussions, and they were extremely useful in two aspects. First, we have participants who are analysts, scientists, specialists, can show themselves how good they are, what level they reached. It is very important for the further work, because if we talk about our profession, it's a pure creativity, and we also need in this kind of incentive, because the communication with colleagues and the criticism of what we say and what we do is really something what we need actually to be successful in our profession. And discussions were really very active and intensive, and we discussed the most acute issues in our life. And Ruslan also said very important issues. What is happening with the economy, with the production of products? Do we have still have the same qualification of the industries? What is actually the ICT for this new form, the robotization and digital economy? All these issues were discussed. But I think that in all the cases we talked, that we have a changing attitude of people towards the environment.
And the human being remains a human being as the main productive force, and the nature stays what it is, nature. So what changes is the interface between the human labor and thought and the natural environment. And the same happens in education. There have been so many concepts floating around regarding education, saying that everything has been in a shambles. But let's look at the system of education. We know from ancient history that Diogenes was sitting in a barrel, and his students were sitting around, and he would be telling them what he knew about the environment and the society and nature and so on. What has changed since then? As a professor and head of a department, I can tell you that I walk up to the podium and I lecture my students, but there are now new technologies that facilitate the transmission of knowledge from me or the Diogenes to the students. the main principle is still there. It hasn't changed anywhere in the economics, even after the emergence of machines, nor has it changed in the education system. The failure to understand the dialectics of this and the fundamental basics of these institutions is what confuses those people that come in and start working for the Ministry of Education and start teaching us various weird things. I recently had a book published which is called Economic Diplomacy. I learned about it coming out from the mass media, from the internet, because the ethics of the publishing houses is so far gone that they decided not to inform you about this or even send you the author's copy and pre-agree on certain aspects of the book that is about to come out. That's the key thing. There are no moral obligations anyway, ethical concerns. Everything is absolutely subordinated to the market, the so-called market. Okay, let's say the tragedy has occurred. Everyone is after the money. Nothing is interesting anymore for anyone. And our government is spurring this up. It's essentially incentivizing this. It's stimulating this. It's a very convenient model. The ministry is not responsible for anything. The market decides everything. The ministry is not responsible for his industry or for what's happening. We had this tragedy in Kemerovo. Who is responsible? Where is the key minister, the federal bureaucrat that would be held responsible for this field? He's not there. No one is responsible, and that has resulted in the idolaterization of this market, and it is a very backwards market. And we idolize the bureaucrats who are responsible for nothing. They simply redistribute the resources they are provided with, and they are the ones that provide themselves with those reports. It was very important for us to discuss these issues, and I thank Ruslan for inserting these issues for discussion. Of course, it's a matter of institutions, management system, the good knowledge of the economic apparatus, and the replaceability of the people in charge. It's the issue of selecting the right personnel and human capital for the right jobs. All of these issues were very important to discuss, especially in the aftermath of the election. And the president is saying that there's going to be a very serious refurbishment and revamping of the system. And I think we all came to an agreement together with my colleagues that without a serious change and revamping of the economic and administrative apparatus, we are unlikely to reach those goals that the president has set before us. I think that's the right approach. That's the right statement. We're all talking about the leap forward, about the breakthroughs and the growth in the economic sphere. That's all important. But what this is coming down to is raising the living standards. We cannot be called a superpower if your population is poor. How can we talk about being great if our people are really below poverty? That's inane. And it's not just a matter of propaganda. What we can say is that you can finish the Moscow State University or the Harvard University and still be really uneducated. You may not have what it takes to accept the knowledge. Why would we drag him all the way to the top and give him the governmental offices? So it seems to me that all of these matters do matter, and we need to converge with the West. We need to say no to this confrontation. This confrontation will result in nothing good. Only bad things will come as a result of this. And somebody quoted one of our academicians who was thinking, well, I pray for the sanctions not to be removed. I don't think this is a very smart statement. I'm saying this with all due respect. Politics and economics are communicating vessels, and this is especially true in the case of the Russian economy, which is huge territorially, and it has to interact and trade with all of the countries in the world without any limitations. I think we did the right thing when we entered the WTO. The other side of the matter is that I completely disagree with an opinion which causes me, to irk. I do not believe that I'm worth anything if somebody can impose their will on me. And if you believe that people are applying pressure on you, then you shouldn't be in that office. No one is imposing anything on us. That's the opinion I'm against. And the Soviet Union collapsed not because of the influence of the West, but because the people at the very top were incompetent and inadequate for their jobs. Maybe Gorbachev would have been able to save the Soviet Union had it not been for the disruptive activities of those three leaders. So my opinion is that what they say, that the things were imposed on us by the West, it's the position of a weak and not very, very smart person. Thank you. As has been said, we have here representatives of different points of opinion, points of view. We have social democrats, and we also had conservatives from a number of countries. Alexei Nabushkin, you get the floor. Thank you, Konstantin. First of all, please allow me to send my best regards to the participants from Matteo Salvini. He is the leader of the party, the League of the North, which just last month had a very significant win in Italy. Mr. Salvini is one of the main candidates to become the Prime Minister of Italy, and has already made a statement that if he becomes the Prime Minister of Italy, he will get out of the sanctions regimes against Russia. This conference was called Sovereignty, Identity and Protectionism, the New Agenda of the World Politics. It was attended by the representatives of the European and the Central Asian political forces. I should mention that Mig Shaprat, the deputy of the European Parliament, was there. Oskar Freisinger was the vice president of the Swiss party, Swiss Popular Party. Zoran Rajdovic, the member of the presidium of the Serb party, Dveri Serbski, Elizir Bertolazzi, the Association Vineta Russia, and our friend Bakir Tarabayev, the leader of the parliamentary faction Progress. And of course, Serge Trifkovic, a matter and a respective individual that represents the foreign policy department of the Chronicle magazine in the United States, which is headed up by Mr. Buchanan, who was the advisor for national security under Nixon. We discussed various matters that are of importance to Europe that they call the problem of globalization and multiculturalism that erodes identity, national identity, and the information streams that are noticed by the populations in those countries. So there are a number of issues that the countries are faced with, especially in Europe, and many in Europe are imposed upon the position of joining the sanctions against Russia, which result in huge losses to the Europeans. Mr. Bertolazzi mentioned that Italy is losing about 3 billion euros annually for the sanctions against Russia. What are the conclusions that we have arrived at the end of the conference? One of the main conclusions, to rephrase Mark Twain, was that the rumors about the full installation of Russia are a little bit overestimated. The second important conclusion is that our partners see in Russia a pillar, a stalwart of traditional values. I would like us to turn our economic policy into the right direction, and we would then finally return to ourselves the function which we had performed for several centuries. Russia had been the factor of stability on the Eurasian space, and if our Western partners see us as the pillar of traditional values, if we change this policy, then we would return this function to us. Dear friends, we have presented to you just some of the speakers from some of the events that took place during the forum, but I would like to thank all of you, all of the participants of the forum. You did a great job, all of you. Good effort on the part of all of you. Those 2 days have been quite busy. And it is very important to note that the second day was as strong as the first day, and maybe even more heated. And that's great. The work continued for 2 days without any interruptions or pauses, without any slack. And we discussed the contemporary state of things from all sides. We discussed agriculture, finances. There was a discussion on the principles of foreign trade and the tax systems. Other domestic issues and foreign issues were discussed at a number of conferences. There was a greater number of those than the number of speakers at this final summary session. The main purpose of the forum is to provide people with an opportunity to speak up, give the scientists and public figures an opportunity, and those who are researchers or do production. The president of the academy said yesterday that I rarely speak at economic forums. Maybe this is the first time, but this is great. We cannot entrust the decisions on matters that identify and determine the movement of Russia and each of us to the professional politicians only. We should speak about the problems, acute issues, and offer recipes and solutions, see each other's shoulders and fill them, and we can also show that it's not only the market fundamentalists are united, that not only the powers to be have the right to speak their minds, but only us, and also us, could have the right to speak about theories, practical issues, about policies and politics. And then we see that we're not the only ones who have such thoughts. It turns out that there are thousands of us like that, and we speak the same language. We keep saying that Russia cannot live without a strategy, that this situation is not going to be natural, a situation where Russia is not developing but rather stagnating, because we have everything for development and the movement forward. I would like to thank the Russian Academy of Science and its leadership for always being acting participants in the organization of our forum, but for also hosting us this time, providing us with the wonderful facilities, and for providing all of their support for our work. And I would like to express a hope that this work we did this week is approaching that moment when Russia will stop floating on the waves of the market without any direction, but rather will join the rest of the world in the economic development, social development, and so on. The press has written about us. The forum is well publicized, but for the work of this forum to be more complete, I would like to invite all of you to promote the ideas that you heard during this forum, wherever you work, wherever you talk to your colleagues and friends, when you give interviews, and by applying the thoughts that you heard here in your day-to-day work. We should keep the conversation going. We shouldn't be the great mute. We should be the people to whom people are listening, with whom people are willing to discuss, and each of us would need to continue to work for the next year until at least the next forum. And in conclusion, I would like to thank all of the organizers and employees of the forum for their wonderful work. There's not a lot of them, but they did a tremendous job, and they made everything for making us comfortable. I would like to thank them for great organization, and they took good care of us. Let us give them a hand of applause. Dear colleagues, as the co-organizers of this forum, I would like to say a couple of words as well regarding what has been happening here. We've had some very interesting discussions and engaging ones, but I would only dwell on two of them because they are the most important ones. The first one is the change in the economic policy. We came to the conclusion, together with the conservatives and the social democrats and everyone else, that the country needs changes in its economic policy. Am I the conservative? No, you are not. We just don't have such a policy, but that's commonplace already. But the problem is in deciding how to change the policy. But it seemed to me that we didn't really move forward with establishing the civil society. We seem to believe that we need to write something beautiful for the president to look at, shed a tear and say, come on, guys, that's how we need to do it. So that we need to do it the way they wrote this, but this doesn't happen like this in life. But the way it does happen in life is that people compete with each other, and this is political competition I'm talking about. I would like to stress this. Mr. Grudinin, or Comrade Grudinin, should I probably say, he expressed the opinion of the people that want to change the powers to be and that be. And I wouldn't really mind if Mr. Grudinin could become our president. Instead of having this endless discussion about not having an alternative to the existing leader until that leader dies. We need to grow up. We need to become more mature. If we need to change the agenda, we need to really deal in politics, because if you do not take care of politics, politics will start taking care of you. And I would like to emphasize that we shouldn't be thinking that there are bureaucrats who admit to do certain things, or there are libertarians, and then on the other side there is some kind of leadership, very powerful leadership, which doesn't have anything to do with what's going on. I would like to just stress that thought. And the other thing is that we have now a clash with the West, and I have my own position on that matter. It doesn't completely align with what my colleague was moderating. I'm talking about Yuri, and he had a very difficult conflict of two philosophies, and I'm on the side of that philosophy that it's a great tragedy that we've now approached this edge of the abyss. And in that sense, the Cold War, as we know it, can become a hot one, can become a hot one. It will not be a repetition of the Cuban Missile Crisis. This will be a Cold War of the 1950s type, when we did have the nuclear weapons. We didn't yet have the parity between Soviet Union and the United States, but we didn't have any agreements in place, nor did we have any arrangements and pacts. And now it is something that is becoming very important to have the dialogue going. And our leaders shouldn't really be concerned about who's right and who's wrong. Maybe they, on the other side, are more at fault, because they were talking about the triumphalism of the West. That's too much. But Mr. Hasbulla was also right when he said that we are idiots ourselves, because we sort of made everything possible for the country to fall apart. And we thought that everyone will start crawling back to us after the Belaveska agreement. That was really a coup d'etat. We are now, tongue-lashing our Ukrainian neighbors that they had a coup d'etat there, and the Americans are to blame, and the Europeans were acting as the fools that signed a piece of paper that wasn't worth anything the next day. But in history, if there is a coup d'etat, and if it won, it becomes the revolution. And that's what people start calling it, and there's nothing that you can do about that anymore. I would like to emphasize that we should probably start thinking about our own agenda. We should start working towards creating the economy. We need to become attractive rather than, building up our military might. Yes, okay, we'll have built it. Yeah, we shouldn't lose our dignity. Of course, that's right. We cannot afford to become junior partners, and I'm sure we keep talking about China here, but China will never allow us to be an equal partner, and they are hinting at that. But we shouldn't be a junior partner either to the West or to China. But I would not want to lecture you. I would like to thank all of you who participated in the conference. I would like to thank my co-chair, Konstantin Babkin, for his role. And I would like to emphasize that the government has given us a single cent for this forum, which has become quite popular already. That's all his personal funds, and that's really quite a feat. And I would like to thank you for all of everything you've done. No. The declaration of the forum, speaking about my personal funds, I would like to say that several hundred people paid for their participation in the forum, and many of them contributed quite a lot. I would like to thank all of the donors for their financial support as well.